Well, I think that the kind of contract that projects a very large amount, not only this year, but the next year and the next year, unrelated to whatever else happens in the economy, is going to be a trap for their employer as well as for themselves, because it is not going to fit the environment that we will have with us, say, a couple of years from now, when we expect that the whole process that we inherited of a very strong inflationary situation will have been cooled off, and we'll be back on a path of strong but orderly growth without this big inflation. And some people will negotiate themselves into a position where they may be high and dry.
The law, I think, is quite clear in the state of Texas. The law has been confirmed on several different occasions by the courts in giving both teachers and principals the right to administer moderate corporal punishment as a means of enforcing school administrative rules and regulations. It seems to me that what we need to do is provide greater confidence and encouragement for our principals. It's becoming increasingly difficult to administer a secondary school in these United States, and what our principals need is encouragement and support and our vote of confidence rather than any attempts to undermine their authority.
And if the president, who is fighting hard to maintain control of federal expenditures, is successful in convincing the Congress that they must go along with this, and I can assure you he's going to fight hard on this point, then we think that we'll be able to hold to this, and that is the right way to deal with the inflationary problem.
Does control of federal expenditures include keeping down wages for federal employees?
No, the whole problem of wages for federal employees it's not a totally unrelated matter, but it is a part of a process that's broader than simply controlling federal expenditures.
This room was one of the first battlegrounds in the action against dirty movies in Texas. Here this afternoon, a 5-man Senate committee under Senator Ralph Hall met to study the movie industry in their first regular meeting. In testimony, Professor C.W. Scudder of the Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth called for more effort to enforce age limits for certain ratings. And Dallas housewife Mrs. Natalie Ornish, who served 4 years on the Dallas Movie Classification Board and helped write the local ordinance, complained that movies now are glamorizing crime and making it more attractive.
Well, this is why I retired from the Movie Classification Board after working on it for 4 years and plus an extra year before that helping to write the ordinance, because I felt after 5 years of very hard volunteer work, and the members do not get paid at all, they are doing it to protect children's interests only. I felt after 5 years of viewing the situation, movies were worse than ever.
That obscenity in one's own home is protected under the First Amendment to the Constitution. Now, the next step they plan to take is, if it's protected in the home, then you must be able to sell it to get it to the home, and it should be protected in the sale. And if you can sell it, certainly it ought to be protected in the production. Now, this is the plan, and we are well aware of it. One of the things that must be done is to keep hammering at this problem before the Supreme Court until they understand the flood tide that is now upon us, and they begin to change their opinion and pull it back to the reasonable one.
Altogether, 7 people testified in the first meeting of the committee here in Dallas. Other meetings will be held later throughout the state. And after today's meeting was over, we asked Senator Ralph Hall, the chairman of the committee, what he thought would come from the meetings.
We don't know at this time exactly what will come out of these hearings. I think the greatest thing that could come out of them, though, would be to encourage the interest of the citizens, of the parent-teachers associations, of the clubs, and of parents in general across this state. This is not an assault on art, but it is an assault on sordidness.
As of right now, the committee still hasn't scheduled any more meetings, but they will make a report to the legislature in 1971 on the motion picture industry in Texas. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News.
That the greatest number of our citizens are wholeheartedly in agreement with that we're seeking, and that's some legislation to preclude the showing of what we call
In both cases, there's evidence of multiple shootings. A very interesting thing is this, that they are both small caliber weapons, but they are of different caliber. Now, what caliber, I'm not the one to say, but anyway, they were shot by 2 different weapons.
What about the small child?
The small child was shot about 3 times in the right face, actually. All 3 projectiles went through, and it was shot twice through the chest, causing massive hemorrhage into the chest, and so it also shows evidence of multiple shootings. Now, these projectiles has not been recovered because they all went through.
How long would you say the victims had been dead when they were discovered?
Well, judging from the examination and the changes in the bodies, that looks like something 2, 3, maybe 4 hours in this vicinity.
The problems that do exist are the problems of human nature. For example, the dial-a-bus. There's just no question about the fact that the thing will work. We can dispatch vehicles from place to place, and there are all kinds of things that can be done. The real question is, will human nature be such as to permit people to ride in groups of 3 or 4 in a vehicle together and pay about maybe 1/3 or 1/2 of what it costs to ride a cab in private? So the things that are unknown really have to do with human nature. They don't have to do with the technology as such. This isn't to say there are no technological problems, but the bigger problems are the human problems.
The whole idea is that we think we have a marketable, usable airplane, even if it is prohibited from flying over densely populated areas. Obviously, though, we would like it if it could fly over land, certainly not over big cities. The whole problem of the supersonic bang and boom, of course, is a very subjective one, and one doesn't really know. And as it does involve other nations, it's one obviously must look with care, and I think we just have to wait and see.
Dr. Gross, what did your examination show of the 3 bodies beginning with the 22-year-old?
The 22 years old male had evidence of multiple gunshot wounds of the head. Now we have recovered 3 projectiles, and 2 of the projectiles still escaped. Now there was no evidence of any other gunshot wounds, but there was at least 4 shots going into the head. Now in this 26 years old body, we found about 3 shots that went through the head, causing a massive fracture of the skull, and in addition there was also evidence of 2 projectiles that went through the chest. These projectiles have escaped. One has been recovered from the chest, and of course 2 projectiles were recovered from the brain.
A young female attorney is the newest member of the Dallas County Hospital Board of Managers. 1 week after a contingent of ladies came to the Dallas County Commissioners asking that they appoint a woman to the board, they chose Mary Milford. She's 26 years old and a practicing attorney in Dallas, certainly the youngest member of the current board and possibly the youngest member ever to serve on the board. Her acceptance by the court came unanimously. Her nomination was made by Commissioner Mel Price.
Well, I suppose, Theo, that we can give you and the other members of the news media much of the credit because our phones and mail became quite heavy after the publicity of the appearance of the group here in the Commissioners' Court meeting last week. And my phone rang all weekend, and as I'm sure many others did, we received many names that were qualified people and others volunteering themselves to serve and this sort of thing. Mary Milford was not one of these. Her strengths came from other people, from other sources. Part of the reason, I think, because there had not been a member of the hospital board from the general geographic area of White Rock, Casa Linda, Casa View, that whole quadrant of the county, the district that I represent. And there had been an effort made by several of the civic groups in past years to try to get someone from that area. So this, in effect, serves two purposes with a very fine and qualified person.
Although the women's group that appeared before the commissioners last week did offer a candidate of their own, their prime purpose was to get a woman appointed to the board. The term which Mary Milford fills brings the board to its full complement of 7. Also today, the commissioners called a public hearing on their budget, the hearing to be January 29th at 10 a.m. This is Teal Salon at the Dallas County Commissioners Court.
My experiences in Washington as General Counsel of the Department of Treasury have further convinced me that our problems can be solved and that the power of the people working together can make great progress. For me to fail to respond to the situation which now exists in Texas would be inconsistent with that conviction.
The personnel for the Cowboys is there. I mean, I'd have to say that they are one of the top 5 teams in the country. I think they are personnel-wise. I thought maybe Starbuck should have been played in the second period of the Cleveland game. With the muddy field, the field was bad at the time. Morton wasn't moving the team. Starbuck maybe could have created some excitement and given them some sort of chance. I know Starbuck's a couple years from being a quarterback yet, but he might have created something and brought him back. Actually, he did bring him back, if you remember, against the Jets down 9-0 in the exhibition game. And he does create some kind of excitement. Morton looked like he was sort of, he just wasn't sure of himself that day. If you watched him going into the huddle, I mean, he was thinking much more than what I thought he should have been. He had his problems. Anyway, Dallas seems to have their problems with Cleveland anyway. I mean, I don't know whether it's Landry and Collier. Collier out-coaching Landry. I don't know. I mean, Landry is noted for being a good coach, too. I do rate Collier as a good coach also. There's something, he's got something on him, let's face it, whether he gets psyched out of it or what. But I made Dallas a favorite every time they played Cleveland, I'll admit that. I mean,
we got a surprise 2 years running in the Super Bowl, too. How do you look at next year's American Conference?
Well, actually, really, last year it was definitely a surprise. I mean, there isn't any question about that. This year, it really wasn't such a surprise.
You know how your organization won first prize, don't you? If you don't, I'll tell you. $18 million to get into a league that's now second place. On the threshold of victory and success, with destiny beckoning to come down the glory road, with many people saying if any indemnity is paid, the National Football League ought to pay the American Football League. Why, what happens? Lamar and his associates agree, and I guess did or will, pay $18 million. Mr. H.L. Hunt, you didn't raise that boy right.
Thank you. This is sort of a height of achievement. Something you dream about, but don't ever realize that it can happen to you. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess it was, I had to be out of town and missed the presentation ceremonies for the award that year. I'm now happy to be getting it, even though it's for the AFL. I guess if you win it twice, does that retire the trophy?
Talking about boners, I think the Dallas Bonehead Club deserves something in return for everything that they've done for me. I have here my own trophy that I'd like to present to the Dallas Boneheads. Big Chief. Would you read the inscription here, and it's with my undoing gratitude.
It says, presented to the Dallas Bonehead Club by Jimmy the Greek Snyder for kicking the wrong team out of Dallas.
The Dallas-Fort Worth area has numerous times been mentioned and numerous times been passed over. What would happen to organized baseball's movement into this area if, again, we were, say, left waiting at the altar?
Well, it wouldn't be the end of the world, I don't suppose. It would be disappointing, as it's been in the past. It's kind of an unusual situation. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is looked on with extreme favor by American League baseball ownership in general. And I think the National League ownership the same way, but we've been overlooked in the past when they went to Atlanta or went to Houston or went to Seattle, and it's been somewhat of a frustrating situation. Our greatest shortcoming is the fact that we do not have a completed Major League stadium.
Well, as you know, we have been proceeding with the city's capital improvement program. We have been able to finance the cash requirements out of this program, from previous bond sales. However, at the present time, our bond fund cash is depleted. We do have contracts out working and payments to be met on these contracts. Therefore, it is necessary that we proceed with the sale of the bonds to finance the construction contracts now underway. For example, our street construction payment estimates for each month runs about $300,000 to $500,000, depending on the weather. Right now, we have something less than $700,000 in cash remaining in our street bond funds. It will take about 2 months from now to obtain the cash from the sale of bonds, which is proposed for February 18th as the date of the sale, and then it takes about another 30 days to deliver the bonds and receive the cash.
What kind of trends do you think that you will be, or you are beginning in terms of trends in other kind of programming in television that you think you've pioneered with Sesame Street?
Well, I think people in television are going to take a closer look at the medium, the real medium, rather than what they wish it were, what it was in 1950 or 1960. That's what we did, was look at the medium as it exists. And I think what we've done is make virtues out of a lot of its weaknesses, which is the repetition of commercials and things like that. So I think that that we will cause people to look at the medium in new ways for educational and other purposes, entertainment purposes as well. All that we hope that commercial television will borrow from us, we having borrowed from them, is the idea that educational content does not turn children off, that you can infuse more content in your entertainment programming and not lose your audience.
How much of an audience do you have at this point?
AC Nielsen estimates that we reach about somewhat over 2 million homes a day, and that's translated by them because of the group viewing and the number of children in homes to about 5 million children.
You have made some comments about involvement, and right now in the entertainment field, the vogue seems to be get involved, get in a cause, talk a whole lot and loudly. But you're not going along with the trend, are you?
No, with trends I find a little draggy, you know. Like uniforms, you know, everybody dresses the same. You know, you're not a hippie unless you're dressed like a hippie, etc. You know. I think the crusade is something which you have inside you all the time, and it should be happening every moment of your life. It doesn't mean marching along a street with a banner, you know. One can get a lot of publicity that way, it's true. But I don't think that's what it's all about. I think that what you feel shows in your actions and the way you talk to people, the way you look at people. It should be an everyday thing, not just a sometimes, oh, well, let's go on a march kind of thing. And also in my performing, I think, I don't know, I've never seen myself on stage, but what I try to do is have some kind of contact with people. And I think that's what's lacking so much, is that this lack of you know, being able to relate to people. That's really what it's all about. I think if we really cared about each other, there would be a lot less trouble in the world.
It's Bonehead of the Year.